As the world is in lockdown, a lot of people, including me, have a lot of time on our hands. So if you see yourself on various streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, going through the vast selection of films and you don't know which ones are good, well, this video is for you. Instead of complaining about how terrible COVID-19 is, let's talk about some good films.
Number 1, Casino Royale.
Were you looking forward for No Time to Die and you still need your 007 fix? Look here, Casino Royale is my personal favorite Bond film. Casino Royale is one of the only Bond films, to my knowledge, to dive deep into Bond's psyche. Daniel Craig's Bond is the closest that we've ever gotten to the character that Ian Fleming created over 50 years ago. This adaptation of the James Bond character is very dark and very gritty. This Bond's main motivation is to get the mission done at all costs. This film is nothing like the Roger Moore films in the 70s. This Bond doesn't stop what he's doing. He doesn't stop the mission just so he can sleep with a bunch of women. He always puts the mission first. Most of all, in this film, James Bond is a cold-blooded killer. He is not afraid to get his hands dirty, and that is how the James Bond character is supposed to be. And this film understands that perfectly.
This film has some of the best action scenes in the Bond franchise, like the parkour chase and the airport scene.
All the characters in this film are all three-dimensional characters. Like, for example, the villain, Le Chiffre, is not your typical Bond villain. He doesn't have a big evil base on top of a mountain, and he plans to destroy the world for some reason, and then James Bond has to stop him. Le Chiffre is an actual character. He has real emotions, and he has motives that you can actually get behind. The love interest Vesper isn't just some sex object for James Bond to sleep with. She is an actual character with real emotions, and that is the best part about this film. I don't want to get into spoilers for the people who haven't seen this film, so I'm just going to give recommendations beyond this film. If you enjoyed Casino Royale, I'd recommend going right to Skyfall and skipping Quantum of Solace, because that film isn't very good. But if you have a more classic Bond film palette, then I would recommend watching films like GoldenEye, A License to Kill, Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the Sean Connery classic, Goldfinger.
Number 2, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
For number 2, I'm kind of cheating, because I would recommend watching Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame back to back, because these films put together is a 5-hour-long epic, done masterfully by the Russo brothers. You have probably seen both of these films, but watching them back to back is a completely different cinematic experience. Avengers Infinity War is a film that is masterfully paced and has some of the best action set pieces in the MCU. Not a single scene in this film drags, and every single scene in this film is visually stunning and very suspenseful. Thanos is easily the best villain in the MCU. He is the most three-dimensional and the most threatening. He isn't like 90% of the villains in the MCU, who are honestly just there for the protagonists to stop. He is the type of villain for you to understand and actually get behind. So, in simple terms, he is the best kind of villain. The ending to this film is so devastating to watch. I'm not really going to talk about it that much because so many other YouTubers and other people have talked about this ending to death. And this is a spoiler-free video generally, so I'm not going to cover it that much here. Avengers Endgame is the direct follow-up to Avengers Infinity War. Though Avengers Infinity War is a hair better than Endgame, I would still say Avengers Endgame is still worth your time. Though the pacing in this film isn't as good as the pacing in Infinity War, this film is more of a character-building film rather than a balls-to-the-walls action film like the first Avengers Infinity War was.
Endgame is a more focused film than Infinity War. Endgame has less characters to juggle. Infinity War had like 30 plus characters, and Endgame only has like, let's say, about 10 or so. So, the characters who weren't in Infinity War as much really have time to shine in this film.
I love the tone in this film. Watching the pure desperation in each of these characters is really intriguing to watch. The best thing I can say about this film is how nicely all the character arcs were wrapped up. This really is a very satisfying finale of a nice 11-year-long saga.
Number 3. SUPERBAD.
SUPERBAD is one of the funniest films ever made. This film is also surprisingly heartfelt also. On the surface, this film is about two best friends, Evan and Seth, getting alcohol through their friend Fogel so they can get the girls at a party drunk so they can finally lose their virginity. Yes, I know this seems like a typical high school comedy plot, but really, if you peel the story back a bit, it is truly a character study between these two characters, Evan and Seth. The character of Evan, who is played by Michael Cera, seems like a typical awkward high school student, but really he's secretly sick of the antics of his best friend Seth. He feels that Seth is dragging him back in life and that he can't experience life because, well, he's sitting around wasting his life with Seth. Seth, on the other hand, is a character who is hell-bent on having sex, and he is deeply insecure and feels that if he loses his virginity, all of his problems will go away. These two characters go on a journey of self-discovery, and then by the end of the film, they become better people. And that's something that is rare, that is kind of rare to see in a lot of these high school comedy films, and that's why SUPERBAD is my personal favorite high school comedy. I cannot talk about this film without mentioning the most memorable character in this film, and that character is Fogel, or who is betterly known as McLovin. All the scenes with McLovin and the two cops are just scenes of comedy gold. Every time I watch this film, I always finish it with a massive grin on my face. This film is a modern classic, and it is my personal favorite high school comedy.
Number 4. Rocky.
Rocky is one of the most inspiring films ever made. The plot consists of a low-end boxer by the name of Rocky, who gets a chance to go the distance, become the heavyweight champion of the world, and along the way falls in love with a girl named Adrian, who works at a pet shop. Say what you want to say about Sylvester Stallone's acting abilities, but he was born to play this role. On the surface, Rocky just seems like a meat-headed bum, but as the film goes on, you begin to warm up to him, and eventually relate to him. As Rocky goes on his journey to face Apollo Creed, you get inspired to just get up and do something with your life. Yes, the training montages might be considered cheesy and dumb to today's standards, but I think they work because they show off how Rocky has changed physically and as a person. If you don't get inspired by these training montages or yet the film, then something has to be wrong with you. I mean, it's so inspiring to watch a man who is initially rejected by society become something greater than he could ever imagine. after you watch this film, if you enjoy it, then I would actually recommend watching the direct sequel to this film, Rocky 2, and then skipping to Rocky Balboa, and then the 2 Creed films. Although Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 is considered classics, to many they might be considered too cheesy and too dated, so if that bothers you, then I would skip those ones. I personally enjoy them. I think they're guilty pleasures, but they don't hold a candle to Rocky, to the first one, and Rocky 2, and all the other ones I listed. And Rocky 5 is just trash. You can skip it. Rocky Balboa and the Creed films go back to the grounded tone that I actually love in the first 2 Rocky films. If you don't have time to watch the whole franchise, though, then just watch the first Rocky. You'll get your Rocky fix, trust me. Number 5, The Shining. This list would not be complete without a Kubrick movie. The Shining is one of the creepiest films ever made. The theme to this film is different for everybody, but there are some fans who really like to take their dedication to this film to the extreme. Like, some people come up with the craziest fan theories about this film. I mean, there's a whole documentary about it called Room 237, which I unfortunately haven't seen, but it's just a collection of various fan theories about this film. It's actually more of a documentary about fan obsession, but I'm getting off topic. I personally think this film is about the consequences of isolation. Yes, there are supernatural elements to this film, but I believe that isolation is too big a factor to be ignored when talking about Jack's sanity. If you want to get freaked out during this quarantine state, then watch this movie. I believe you could talk about this film for hours, but unfortunately this video is very condensed, and I want to get through each of these films rather quickly, and they're more or less recommendations of each film, so I will do a more in-depth video talking about this film in greater detail.
If you enjoyed this video, consider clicking like or clicking the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. If you want to be notified every time I upload a video, make sure to hit the bell notification so you can be notified every time I upload a video. This has been Anthill Shapebox. Stay safe and stay healthy.